Hello and welcome back to my channel. Thank you very much for watching. My name is Sian. Please subscribe if you'd like to see more. There are loads of helpful videos on this channel. Here is what I read in January, and it was a better month than December when I literally only read one book. This month I've managed to get through 6 books, which I'm quite chuffed with. Something to do with just chilling out a bit in January, taking it a bit easier, aside from all the decorating and all the stuff that I've had to do in the B&B. So I shall crack on. The first book I read this month is called My Grandmother Sends Her Regards and Apologises. Haven't got it with me because I've lent it to my mum. It is by Fredrik Backman, and Fredrik Backman also wrote A Man Called Over and Britt Marie Was Here. Britt from Britt Marie Was Here is in this book, but she's a younger version than in the book about her. This book is different to the others. The others are kind of based around quite an awkward character. This one does have an awkward character in it, but it is based, it's kind of a mythical, kind of ethereal feel to it as well. It's about a girl called Elsa who is 7, and Elsa's quite a fierce child. She knows what she wants, she knows how to get it, and her grandmother dies. And she and her grandmother have told each other these stories of this kind of magical land. They have a land called the Land of Almost Awake and also the Kingdom of Miamis. And Elsa's grandmother had been a doctor. She'd kind of worked in all around the world in war-torn places. Wherever there were tragedies, she'd been in the tsunami. So Elsa's grandmother has this incredible backstory, and she sets Elsa this treasure trail when she dies, and Elsa has to get to the end of it, and she finds out that the characters from her imaginary world are in fact characters in real life. And it's obviously a journey of grief for Elsa and for all the people around her, and it's a good book. I didn't enjoy it as much as the other books I've read by Fredrik Backman. I have bought Beartown, which is another one by him, so I'll let you know how I get on with that one. But I did really enjoy the book, just not as much as the previous ones. So I would give it like 3.5 to 4 stars out of 5 as opposed to 5. Right, the second book I read this month is The Peculiar Pegs of Riddling Woods. Now this follows the story of Poppy and Erasmus, and it's a children's book, but it's really scary. Like genuinely, I was quite scared. Poppy lives with her grandmother because her mum has died. Her father is away working because I think he can't really be around Poppy that much, so he's abroad. He's met someone else. Poppy's in this kind of new place in a school where people are bullying her, are not nice people, and she meets this odd boy called Erasmus, and they uncover this kind of mystery that's happening where people are sort of turning grey. Basically, in the woods there are these kind of very strange creatures which are sort of stealing children's souls and their hearts and turning them into silk. They also, everyone has to keep their sugar locked away, and they have to not dust their windowsills, and it scared me to the point that if I was younger, I would totally have hidden all sugar cubes or sugar or anything like that, because it would have freaked me out. I mean, it's a very, very good book. It's a bit of an odd book, but if you're 9 years old, which is kind of the age it's aimed at, I'd imagine it's a pretty good book. I enjoyed reading it. I was scared reading it, so it's clearly a powerful book. And the characters are fantastic. It was easy to kind of follow along with them and go through the story, so I enjoyed that side of it too. The third book I read this month is Turtles All the Way Down by John Green. This book was really interesting. I wasn't sure how I would kind of feel about it. There's a girl called Asa, and she and her friend Daisy decide to kind of go on this hunt to find this millionaire who has gone missing, and the millionaire is the dad of one of Asa's kind of childhood friends who she hasn't seen in quite a long time. Asa has quite a lot of issues with her mental health, and she manages to kind of trick herself that her not taking her medication is a good thing to do. So she is on a real battle with herself throughout this book, feeling this kind of constant darkness, constant worry about germs, about touching someone. And as a teenage girl, you want to be kind of able to, I don't know, kiss a boy or things like that, and she can't cut off her brain thinking, hang on, we're sharing microbes when we're kissing, that's going to make me ill, then I'm going to go to hospital, then I'm going to die of C. diff. And she just has these spiraling thoughts constantly. This book really is about mental health, but it's written in a way that you kind of don't realise you're reading a book about mental health, if that makes sense. It's young adult fiction, thoroughly enjoyable. I always love John Green's books, but this one was particularly sort of poignant and strong and resonates because it really made me think about how mental health would have such a huge impact on you if that was your brain kind of constantly telling you all those things of not being worthy and not, you know, just it's kind of overwhelming that someone could be feeling like that all the time, basically. So I really enjoyed this book. The fourth book I read this month is The Immortalists by Chloe Benjamin. This is the Bookish Mama's Book Club book for January. I loved the concept of this book, but I found the book fell flat a bit in places. I found the first story, basically the premise of the book is that there's a young group of 4 children who hear that there's a woman, kind of a gypsy, who can tell them the date and day that they will die. And so they all go to see her and they cannot tell each other their date, but they know when they're going to die, supposedly. It's kind of about, if you know the date you're going to die, how is that going to change the way you live your life? I found the story of Simon, the first story, I loved that one. I found it heartbreaking. I really got into it. He ran away from home young and moved to San Francisco because he knew he was going to die young and he wanted to live his life to the fullest. And from there on in, I didn't find it as enjoyable. And although I absolutely loved the concept, I struggled to read the next 3 characters' stories, and I didn't particularly like those characters, which made it hard to read the story about them. There were definitely elements of it that I really enjoyed, and I wouldn't say not to read it because I think it's a good book, but it's not one that I would read again. The 5th book I read this month is called To All the Boys I've Loved Before by Jenny Han, and it is the story of a girl called Lara Jean who keeps, basically when she splits up with a boy or when she falls in love with a boy, she writes them a letter and she keeps them in this hat box that her mother had given her. Her mother is no longer alive, so her dad has brought her and her 2 sisters up fantastically. And basically one day her letters go missing and it turns out they have been posted to all the people they're about, which, if you can imagine as a teenage girl or as anyone, your love letters that weren't meant to be sent out being sent out, it's quite terrifying really, isn't it? So I sat down and I read this whole book in one day, not in one sitting, but I sat down when my daughter was doing karate and I read for an hour, and it was so good that when I got home I just had to keep reading. So I finished it all in one day, which was just brilliant. I haven't done that in so long. It's such an easy read, such a good story, and the characters are fantastic. I absolutely loved it, and I'm going to have to get the next, I think there's 2 more books in this series, so I'm going to have to get those. But I just absolutely loved this book, and it made me feel so happy when I'd finished it. And a book that can do that to you, can lift your mood, is a very powerful book indeed. I really loved it. The 6th and final book I read this month is All the Rage by Courtney Summers. This book has been on my to be read pile for approximately 2 years. It's basically very close to 2 years. And I don't really know why I hadn't picked it up, but I did know it was about rape, and I think I wasn't, you know, I needed to be in the right headspace to be reading it, I think. This is the story of Romy Gray, who was raped by the sheriff's son. And Romy wears bright red lipstick, she has bright red nails. It's kind of like her armour, it's kind of her, she doesn't feel her without this on. The problem is that obviously the sheriff's son, people believe him over her, and she's a teenager growing up in America, and the whole kind of community turns against her because of what she has said has happened, even though it's the truth. So she has really struggled with the fact that people didn't believe her, people bully her at school, her mum and dad have split up and her mum is now happily with someone else, which is really nice for her to see. And she has a job outside of the village, the town. She gets out, so she kind of escapes that kind of cliqueiness of a small town where everyone knows her and knows about her. Whilst this is a very harrowing book, I think I thought it was going to be far more angry than it is, and actually it was really well written, because whilst you felt that anger and you empathised with that anger, the whole book wasn't an angry, rah book. It was just a good book about all the kind of emotions that are around something like sexual assault, and about, you know, not being believed and things like that, which is just so intrinsically unfair when something horrific has happened to you and people don't believe what you're saying. And then if you try and go out wearing, I don't know, a skirt that's a bit short, they're kind of saying, well, you know, you were asking for it, kind of thing. The book surprised me because I didn't think it was going to be as enjoyable a read as it was, but I did really, really enjoy reading this. But I did find that the story flowed, the characters were good, the storyline and the plot was really good. And I enjoyed reading it, even though a lot of it was quite harrowing and some of the detail is quite graphic. But it's a very good book. And that is it, the 6 books that I read in January. I hope you enjoyed that. Next month I'm going to film it a bit early because I'm going on holiday at the end of February. So I figured I'll film it up to, let's say, the 22nd and upload it around then, so that you know what I've read in February to that point, because I don't want to be filming when I'm on holiday, so I'm not going to. I'm going to be reading, so that fingers crossed March's what I read is going to be epic. There's going to be loads in there. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, give us a thumbs up. If you would like to, then please subscribe, and if you do subscribe, make sure you click on that little bell so you get a notification when I upload a video. I'll see you again soon. Alright, bye!